Lynn Hunt's Politics, Culture and Class in the French Revolution is a major turning point in historiography. It bridges the gap between social history and the linguistic and cultural turn. For generations, the interpretation of the French Revolution was dominated by classic Marxist orthodoxy. This view saw the revolution primarily as a class conflict, an economic shift where the rising capitalist bourgeoisie overthrew the feudal aristocracy. Hunt challenges this rigid deterministic model. She does not abandon the social dimension altogether. She argues that politics and culture cannot be reduced to mere superstructures generated automatically by underlying economic bases. Instead, she posits that the French Revolution must be understood through the lens of political culture. This is a dynamic framework encompassing the values, expectations, rituals, symbols, and languages that gave the political actors of the 1780s and 1790s a coherent way to understand and shape their world. To conceptualize the relationship between society and politics without falling back into crude base structure hierarchies, Hunt employs the metaphor of the Mobius strip. Society and politics are intertwined on a continuous twisting surface where it is impossible to say where one ends and the other begins. They shape each other constantly. Hunt explores how the revolution constituted itself through new forms of language, ritual, and visual representation. First, language itself was radically reinvented during the revolution. Old regime terminology, saturated with deference, hierarchy, and privilege, was systematically dismantled. In its place, revolutionaries forged a new political vocabulary centered on transparency, unity, the general will, and absolute vigilance against conspiracy. Words like virtue, citizen, and nation took on new meanings. However, this rhetoric carried an inherent structural tension because the revolutionaries claimed to embody the pure, undivided will of the people. Any disagreement or opposition could not be viewed as legitimate pluralistic debate. Instead, it had to be pathologized as treason, corruption, or aristocratic counter-revolution. This linguistic structure laid the groundwork for the Manichaean worldview that ultimately culminated in the terror. The very language of unity created a logic of exclusion. Second, political culture was not just spoken or written, it was performed. Festivals, oaths, public ceremonies, and changing everyday fashions became vital technologies of power. Rituals such as the Festival of Federation or the Festival of Reason were designed to sever historical ties with the monarchical past and forge a new collective identity. The regenerated French citizen, by reshaping public space and daily habits, the revolutionary state sought to interiorize new political values. People were not just told to be citizens, they were made to act like citizens. Third, Hunt conducts a brilliant iconographic analysis of how visual symbols evolved. The traditional figures representing the nation shifted dramatically. Early in the revolution, allegories drew upon classical motifs or feminine symbols of liberty. As radicalization intensified, particularly under the Jacobin Republic, the image of Hercules emerged as a dominant icon of popular strength, collective unity, and physical force. The most famous depiction showed the French people overwhelming with the hydra of federalism, Hercules represented the muscular, laboring body of the sovereign people. This demonstrates how visual art actively produced political alignment rather than passively reflecting it. Images were not just decorations, they were tools of persuasion. Hunt shifts from the symbolic realm to rigorous quantitative and empirical analysis. She investigates who actually made the revolution and where political loyalties lay. First, Hunt used statistical analysis and regional mapping across French departments to test whether economic modernization and industrialization dictated left wing political radicalism. The results challenged standard Marxist expectations. Left wing political radicalism and deep revolutionary participation did not correlate neatly with advanced capitalist development or large scale manufacturing. Instead, political alignment was heavily shaped by local historical conflicts, pre existing administrative structures, and the presence or absence of traditional old regime elites whose dominance local actors sought to overturn. The revolution was not simply a product of economic change, it was shaped by local politics and local histories. Second, Hunt examined municipal councils and local leadership across cities like Amiens, Bordeaux, Nancy, and Toulouse. She tracked the rise of a new political class. The revolution did not empower a cohesive, pre existing capitalist merchant class. Instead, it propelled professional groups, lawyers, lesser judicial officials, medical professionals, and educators into positions of local and national power. They were not the factory owners or industrialists that Marxist theory predicted. They were professionals who had skills in rhetoric, law, and administration. These individuals often functioned as culture brokers. They bridged urban centers and provincial peripheries through Masonic lodges, reading societies, and political clubs. Political identities and leadership roles were forged through active participation in these new sociabilities rather than derived strictly from static socio-economic station. It was not just about class, it was about who you knew, where you networked, and how you participated in the new political culture. Hunt's politics, culture, and class in the French Revolution revolutionized modern historiography. She demonstrates that political culture, rhetoric, and symbolism possess an autonomous historical efficacy that cannot be reduced to economic determinism. The French Revolution was not merely a battle over property and class positions, it was a titanic struggle over the very meaning of authority, representation, and human community. Hunt provides us with an indispensable methodological framework. She knows us that we cannot understand political change without understanding how language, symbols, and rituals shape political action. At the same time, she insists that we must not ignore the social and institutional context in which these cultural forms operate. The revolution was both cultural and social. It was both symbolic and material. This is the profound and lasting contribution of Hunt's work. It does not offer easy answers. Instead, it opens up new ways of thinking about the relationship between culture, politics, and class. It challenges us to see revolutions not just as economic events but as struggles over meaning itself.